Hello everybody, and thank you for coming back to the channel, and welcome back also to this series of building the Antonov. So what I've got so far, I think you've seen this already. I've got the basic part of the fuselage, which is here. Here the engine will go onto this. I took it off now for a moment. I've got also the empennage, the tail assembly, just decorating here my table. I've got also the engine cowling, which kind of fits in here, more or less. I think it'll fit okay, you see. And I've got also then the cockpit slash hatch that will go better seated in there. So what I'm doing now, what I have to do now, the next step is to build the underside of the fuselage, right? So I'm putting it upside down, which actually good that I didn't put the empennage on it. And what I have to do here is I have to build up the formers, and I've got some of them already prepared, but I'm not sure where. Here they are. So I'm building up these formers based on the plan. This one I believe will go somewhere here. I've got one for here, and I've got another one which goes I think somewhere here. I'll figure that out. And an important piece that comes here is what is called the basic stringer, the lower stringer, which is kind of like the keel. This is the longest piece I believe in the whole model, so I have to make sure that I have enough space on the wood. You see, that's I've drawn it out on the masking tape, and I've stuck it to the plank of wood. I'll cut it out, and this is, as I say, probably the most important piece. It will help hold the engine mount sturdy because it's still a little bit wobbly. It will connect all the lower part of the formers, and it will give it all the bottom shape actually. So pretty important piece. And after doing that, then I have to assemble it and finish the formers and assemble it, and maybe putting them also the smaller stringers, the 1mm stringers. And so that's going to be what this chapter is going to be about. I'm also thinking on the side about how to optimize material, because I mean I could always go down to the store and buy more, right? But if I can optimize the material, I like doing it. So I've got some pieces also. I might also in between start to trace out the trailing edges of the wings. The wings are going to be a huge challenge of their own. So I might be doing that also to make sure that I use as much of the material in the best way as possible. We don't need to waste if we can avoid it. So anyhow, I'll be doing this, doing the assembly. I'll come back with when there's some little bit of visible progress. So now I've got all the formers ready. Let's see if I can put them maybe in their spots so that you can see them. The ones with pins are still, well, they should be dry because it was overnight. Then this is going to be here, and C over here, and M is over here. And I've got also the long basic stringer, the keel I'm going to call it, also cut out. I've left a little bit at each end in case some adjustment is needed. It's always easier to cut down than to add. And I've also written here, you probably can't see it, at every notch that I have to put in, I've put in the letter of the position where it's going to be, or the station. And now the idea is to go one by one with a needle-nosed file, filing in and basically fitting in the lower formers. And ideally there's got to be like 1mm protrusion. It has to protrude like 1mm, because then I'm going to be putting the stringers which are 1mm thick, so then I wouldn't need to put one at this area, right? So I would save some weight, not with wood but maybe more with glue. So that's going to be then the next step. Look here, where's A, B, C, this is number B, so this one would go here. Try to squeeze it in and file it one by one and see if it takes some shape. Then it looks like a kind of like the carcass of a whale in a museum, anyhow, that's progress. Once that is done and it's clear that it's going to fit, then it's going to be disassembled basically, because it won't be glued, and then put on the formers onto the fuselage itself, and then the keel, fit it on, make sure that it somehow reaches where it has to here with the end, because this is what's going to then glue onto this last piece, which is basically here, right? So I don't know if you can see it. No, here is where it's going to fit. So I think it's going to get going to look nice, going to have some shape, and after that is going to be figure out the electronics and a place for them. So, and time for another update. So I've managed to put on the lower part of the formers, those are already glued, and then what I call the keel, I've managed to squeeze it in, it's still not glued, but I managed in the process to break it three times, or crack it at least, because of the wood grain and because it didn't fit exactly, so I had to do quite a few adjustments, so it was much more of a battle than I anticipated. What I've also done in between, I've glued then the engine mount and put in the screws where I could. Some of them I can't pressing anymore, so I might actually remove them. I think I'm kind of damaging the screw already there. But anyhow, now it's getting the shape of the fuselage, and what I want to do now is try to figure out the landing gear. So the rear landing gear is somewhere. I had it here a minute ago. Here it is, it's in front of me and I can't see it. So basically, here's the the tail wheel. This I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to make it that it's free cast string. I think that's how it's called. So basically, this piece of plastic is going to go in there, and I'm going to sandwich the rear part with two pieces of wood that again I've cut, and I'm not sure where I have them anymore. So I've got to find them, but they're somewhere lying around. I just cut them to size, and that will somehow sandwich in there and allow then the wheel to free cast. This big long piece at the top is so it doesn't turn around. It won't be able to turn around, it'll just be able to move kind of like a little bit of an angle. I'm not sure, maybe even less than 90 degrees. I'm not sure, something like that. And then the next challenge is going to be, maybe when I do that, then I'll consider maybe putting already glue in the keel in. I still haven't done it, as I say, but I have to figure out then the landing gear, which is also complicated in itself, because it's got like two struts that kind of hold it together, but then it's got a big strut that actually goes up into the wing, and I'm not sure how to do it. So I might just do then the central part. I don't know if you can see it, it's underneath the cowling here. If you look here, probably on the right side, here is the landing gear. It somehow goes in here, so I'm thinking of using a skewer or a stick. Again, I don't know where I have the stick. Here it is. And making the shape out of wire. I've got some thicker gauge wire, so that's also going to be a bit of a challenge. And making the shape so that I can put the wheels on. And then I've got to figure out how I would connect, maybe soldering, which is going to be challenging, these kind of struts here that are somehow damping struts. Not sure really how I'm going to do it. That's a bit of the challenge. So I've got to give it some thought, start to do some bending, and try to get the shape. And the wheels, I have them also here, the same wheels as on the Mosquito, so they're a bit bigger than needed, but it's what I have, and I think it'll be okay also. So anyhow, so next challenge is the landing gear. So this is a bit of the progress on the undercarriage. I think I already showed you the tail wheel, that's there already. And now what I've managed to do, I've bent, and this is 1mm wire, so it's actually quite hard to work with. I tried to make a circle here. It's not a circle, it's a bit crooked. I do it around the screwdriver so that I can put in the skewer. This I've done, this would be then the front of the landing gear, let's say, the first. I think it'll go somewhere here. And now I'm working on the rear part. And now my idea is, so this will come somehow, I don't know how to hold it actually. This will come somehow like this. The wheel will come here. And then my aim is to take this one, bend it up, and then try to create some kind of a shock absorber. For that I've got this lollipop piece that I also used on the rear tail wheel. It's quite thick plastic, and my plan is to, and it fits actually, this wire actually fits. If I polish it up, it fits. And my idea is to bend this up, put a little bit of a rubber band in it, like it'll be 1 centimeter, my calculation is 1 centimeter of the wire, 1 centimeter of rubber band, and then if you can see it here through the mesh, there's this other wire that maybe would go across, would come down, and would go 1 centimeter into this tube. Right, and like that somehow to create the shock absorber. In this way then the the wheels will have some kind of a shock absorption from this wire, which is already quite strong, and then have the addition of that shock absorbing. Now the problem is that I'm going to have to bend this up quite a big angle, or like a, I don't know how, like an acute angle, so it's like 30 degrees, so the opposite of it, or maybe 45, I don't know, maybe it's 45, so it's the opposite of 45, or the complementary. And then I need to somehow connect these two, so for that I'm going to need to do some bonding. I'm not sure, I'll probably try soldering, I'll try maybe super glue with baking powder. I'm not sure, I'm really not confident about that, because that's going to be the difficult thing, like to somehow connect these two, that it's somehow solid, and that it then connects up to the shock absorption. The shock absorption, I think, will help, will be good to have for sure. On the other hand, it's also kind of scale, and then the challenge is going to be to how to connect it in here into the fuselage without damaging this piece. This is still not glued, but then I will be putting in here the skewer. It will be shorter than this, and I believe it goes from, this is C to E, right? So it'll be somewhere in here, and I've got to see how I'll put it. Maybe from the inside, let's see, somehow in there, maybe closer down to the keel itself, that it holds in the wires. So point is that it doesn't fall off, the wheels don't fall off when it's flying, and that it can take the hit and spread the impact across the frame, and that it doesn't break anything when it crashes, because it will be hard landings, I'm sure. So anyhow, so now bending this with quite some difficulty, but slowly doing it, and then the next challenge is going to be the soldering, which I'm scared of, so maybe tomorrow I manage to do it. So this contraption that we see here is the mock-up of the landing gear. So let me clear out a little bit, and I'll take it apart and I'll show you what I have. It might actually come apart on itself. So here I just have some of these pegs or whatever, like holding in the wheels, just to see. It's not completely straight, so it's going to still need some adjustment. So the wheels can come off, there, wheels off. And then here, I'm not sure if I need these, I think these can come off, and then it'll declutter a little bit. Here is then the whole structure. This is actually just to hold it, and this I can also take off. And here we have the structure, right? So this top part is the part that will be fixed to the fuselage and actually is serving for the shock absorbers, that it has some place to hold on to. This will be the shock absorber, one on each side. I still need to put the rubber in. I have to figure out how much, probably like 1 centimeter, and I have to figure out probably some rubber from the rubber motors that I have, or normal rubber band. So I can take this out. Sometimes it comes out on its own, so I'm hoping that it doesn't happen once mounted. And then this is the part. Let's see if I take the shock absorbers off. I mustn't lose those because they're white on white, and I am afraid of losing them. And now the complicated part here, as I say, is the soldering, and I don't want to solder. I'm trying to think of ways that I can avoid it. So I've put some wire to connect it. I don't know if you can see it there. So I've just tied it up with some wire. This one then of course then just gets loose. So I'm thinking that there might be a way, if I use some thread, some sort of thread maybe, that I can actually prevent it from slipping up and down, and then I would be able to maybe keep it there, and then with super glue fix it in place. I'm afraid that soldering might actually work to hold it, but it's still going to be brittle, so I'm not sure if it's going to help. So I think that going with the wire is probably the best. I might need to trim it a little bit, and then with the thread, and then put on super glue, maybe even, because you know, if you put baking soda or pencil, like if you sand down some paper, some pencil, there's a propelling pencil, but even from a normal pencil, then that becomes rock hard. So that might be also an option to do, but I still have to kind of set it up again, make sure that it's as straight as possible, because then this is going to go somewhere, I believe is at this height, and then I've got to figure out where I'm going to put in the top beam. If I put the top beam now, let me take the shock absorber off. I believe the top beam will have to go somewhere, probably mounted here, and I'm not sure if at an angle or not. This might clash with the wing, which is actually part of the design, so I've got to figure out how I would, at what height I'm going to put it actually. So that's all stuff to figure out, and to at some point install also. So anyhow, still some bending needing and some adjustments, but I'm hoping that this, being quite stiff metal, the 1mm gauge, I don't know what gauge it is, but 1mm thick wire, hopefully is going to be enough. Now the fixing to the structure itself is going to be the next challenge. So getting closer with the landing gear, but let me give an update because there are a lot of small things going on, and if I leave it for then you probably won't see it. So let's see, I'll take the wheels off. These are just put in there for show to see what it would look like. Going backwards, kind of what I've been doing, the structure, I've bonded it together. As you remember, maybe you don't, but I had like a metal wire going around it. Then I put some thread, this thread, and then super glue, and I did that I think a total of 3 times. I might still need to clean it up, but I think it's quite solid, and I'm avoiding the soldering, right? So, and I've tried to straighten it as much as possible without breaking anything, without bending it too much. The distance in between here should be kind of okay. I've got my skewer somewhere that actually would go through here, so that is kind of set. Then for the shock absorbers, these are 2 little tubes from a lollipop. Initially I wanted to put some rubber. I did cut some rubber, tried to squeeze it in. It was very hard to squeeze in, and it was even harder to squeeze it out. Maybe not even harder, but it was also hard to squeeze it out because I could only just get it in. I couldn't push it in to where I wanted to have it, somewhere in the middle. So after thinking about it a little bit, then I decided to take out the rubber and basically cut the rubber up in little pieces, so as small pieces as I could kind of get and handle, and then squeeze it in. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but here it's got the little pieces of rubber in there, more or less up to the height. So there's, I don't know if you can see it actually, there's a little bit of movement, right? And that should be on both sides. I'm kind of hoping that I have it kind of equal on all 4 points, right? Like both shock absorbers from both ends. So hopefully that will somehow work. Now what else I've been doing, and this I'm going to take it out of here because this is a bit of a construction and it's not glued in. Again, with the point of distributing the weight, I've over-engineered it a little bit because I like doing that. This is the wire from the landing gear, and then I've put here a piece of balsa and 1mm ply. I've glued it together, and that fits directly in there into the frame. And out of a can of a drink, then I've cut out some pieces, and I've kind of, I don't know if you can see it by the shape, I've shaped it over the 1mm wire and screwed it into that ply. It still moves. I'm not sure if it's needed that it moves. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Probably it isn't. But I'm hoping that this is stable enough and that it'll somehow distribute the impacts into that whole frame, which is somehow I'm hoping that distributing the impact and the weight, it'll be good. So, and this then, as I just took it out, some of the screws will have to go into the balsa. This will go in here, and it fits in here quite snugly, and it makes that height. It keeps the height of the landing gear, right? So that will still have to be fixed and glued. But the next steps is going to be to take out the keel, prepare. I've marked in the ribs where the skewer is going to go, and the length of the skewer, I think it's up to here. So this kind of length, it's going to go from, I believe, from form B, C, D, E to E. This is F actually. This is E, this is F. So because D is somewhere at the top. So from B to F, that's where the skewer will go. So for that I have to make some holes, make it fit kind of, and once I have that in shape, I'll be able to kind of assemble the landing gear, glue everything in place, and then I'll put in the keel. And with that it's pretty much done, other than then not the planking, but then putting the stringers around the lower part of the fuselage that I don't need to bore you with. But anyhow, quite a lot of, as I say, over engineering, which is fun, but also quite tedious. You doing those little, the metal is actually quite hard, it's not soft metal at all, so making the holes and putting the screws in and everything does have its own challenges, but I'm kind of enjoying it, all these little pieces. So here is not the finished product, but some visual progress. So I've just propped up the things. So I'll take the tail off again, still not glued on, and I can take the canopy off also, still has to be finished, and the engine cowling I think also take it off. It's not so easy. Yeah, so take it off, hopefully not damage it, and basically the undercarriage is on. So I've managed to assemble it all completely, not without some difficulty. I've had to split the, what I call the keel, because the landing gear was in the way. I was hoping it wouldn't be needed, but in the end I had to do it. So the keel, the lower, the basic stringer is actually in two pieces. Basically the landing gear is on a pivot. It doesn't move because of this that is keeping it in place, right? So you probably won't be able to see it, but there is ever so slightly a little bit of movement, a little bit of cushioning, which is more decorative probably than practical. So in any case, I think it looks quite okay. It's standing quite straight, which I'm happy about. It's not loop-sided. And also then on the tail, I've put in some more reinforcements. I know I have to be careful with weight in the back, but I wanted to make sure that that doesn't break, because if it does, it would be very difficult to fix them later. So that tail wheel assembly is there, and it's free castering, but just a few degrees, so it doesn't turn backwards, and then it holds at least its position. So that is kind of the general attitude that the plane will have when on the ground, which is most of the time, let's face it. And so far so good. Some challenges. I still have to do some changes, because I've realized that I'm going to need to make a hole through one of these boards so that I can put in the cable for the wing servos, but I'll probably do that then on the next chapter. In any case, thank you everybody very much for watching and for following along on this one, and I'll see you next time.